Hey there, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us here on Blended Family Breakthrough. We are always so grateful for the time that you choose to spend with us every week. If you haven't yet left a rating or a review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen, I just want to encourage you to take a moment to do that right now. You know, I take family leadership very seriously. One of my desires, even in our current empty nest years, is to be the kind of family leader that my children really want to connect with. But often I feel overwhelmed or frustrated as I lead my blended family. All the complexities can lead to confusion, and that robs me of the confidence that I'm really trying to lead with. So if you've ever felt that way, this episode is for you. I'm really excited to welcome Mike Haney back to the show to talk about blended family leadership. So settle in and get ready, and we'll get to the interview with Mike just on the other side of the intro. Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey, Mike, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me back here on the show.
Hey, I really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about leadership in our family,
yes,
in our marriages and our family and that kind of thing. And I wonder, maybe we could just start with a little bit about what got you interested and focused on intentionally leading when it comes to marriage and family life.
Well, I really appreciate the question. It's a great one to start things off. A lot of it, as you might imagine, came from my own story and experience, right? So I watched my parents have a really kind and loving marriage. It lasted more than half a century until my mother passed away. And if I look back, they kind of made it look a little too easy almost. But when my first marriage ended, I realized I had to be thinking about this in a different way. So this idea about leadership and being intentional is something that my wife, Jana, and I have really leaned into during our 23 plus years together now. And so if you add in the years that she and I both spent in prior marriages, it's more than 40. So it's quite the marital history. So we definitely knew some ways that worked better than others, shall we say. So being intentional really has helped us a lot. It's really has made our marriage much more fulfilling and tender and kind and supportive. Yeah. Really much more than I even could have imagined, because we made this choice early in our life together that we would need to be intentional. I'd love to be able to say it was some, revelation or some really wonderful thing that we were sort of guided in this area towards. But we had a lot of challenges early in our marriage, mainly from outside forces and such. So we kind of came to the mutual conclusion that we had to be intentional. We couldn't just sort of let things happen, right?
Right.
And a key element of this is that I know a lot of couples seem to structure their marriages on things like projects and goals. You got to get that first promotion and buy the starter home and then get partnership and then you got to get the kids and then get the ginormous second house, et cetera. A marriage needs a lot more foundation than that. So I'm really proud and pleased to say the result of all this that Jane and I have done together is a fulfilling marriage. It really does get better every day. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your skirt here, Mike. It really is something that's been very fulfilling to both of us.
That is so good, Mike. I appreciate that, and I recognize that as well. I think early in my business career, which was really kind of coincided with the early years of our marriage, I did some communication training and some leadership training and things like that. And I started going, I wonder what would happen if I actually tried that out at home. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm like, wow, some of these principles actually translate. And that led me to going back to school a little bit later in life and focusing on
Good.
leadership as a major and all of that. So
Mhm.
this is a really great, interesting topic to me. I love it. Yeah.
Excellent.
Hey, back in one of our, it was an email or conversation, you talked about the 5 stages of marriage that
Yes.
Michelle Weiner Davis kind of describes. I wonder if you could give us just a quick overview of those stages, and maybe that'll help set a framework for the rest of our discussion.
No, it's a really, really great framework. We, Jane and I have both read her books and content and such, and we've actually met her in a couple of different contexts, which has been really helpful. So it's really is a great model once you consider how it works. And the step one is we all remember these days. It's called passion prevails, right? Early in the relationship, you can't keep your hands or any other body parts off of each other. It just seems like you're in some amazing phase, and cannot believe this is happening. I can't believe I found this person. It's so amazing, wonderful, wonderful.
Yep.
And then the next, and that can last, hopefully some period of time, but generally doesn't last more than a few weeks or months or what have you until sadly we come to stage 2, which is, I love the way she puts it. What was I thinking? And it can be a very long and sharp and deep fall there. We sort of realize what's going on. Or you all of a sudden you're disappointed. This person isn't all you thought they were. You're having squabbles, fights, disagreements on things that you just even just a few weeks or months before you didn't notice or you didn't pay attention to, or whatever it was, right? So it can be a pretty challenging place to find yourself in, and
sure.
So I think most people have at least experienced some part of stage 2 in their relationships as well, sadly. So
right.
And then go from there to stage 3, which is it's titled "Everything Would Be Great If You Changed." And this is where, as you might imagine, okay, well, one partner says, well, we're having troubles. It's clearly not my fault.
Right. Yeah.
So, if only you did this, or if only you made more money, or if only you had made our home more comfortable, or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
It really tries to get responsibility shifted to the other person. And quite honestly, Mike, a lot of couples get stuck here at stage 2 and 3, right? And they never really sort of get back. In fact, it cannot be a terribly pleasant place to be. I've known some couples that are well into their several decade of marriage that still seem to be here, right? And it can definitely be a place. It's just a very unpleasant place to be. So
I remember a time where Kim and I were stuck in that stage. And I think we both really wanted each other to change. And it's funny because a lot of times we work with couples, and one of the things when they decide they're going to engage in coaching with us, I challenge them to say, hey, we're here for you to change you. Okay.
Right.
If you're here expecting Mike and Kim to change your partner, you're probably here with the wrong expectation.
Yes.
Right? And that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes when we're trying to create change in what we're experiencing. So
it is. It is. That stage 3 can be a pretty lonely and scary place, because all of a sudden you realize after coming through stage 2 and now in stage 3, it's a lot of blaming going on. You think you're great and the other person is not, and then lots of bad things can happen. People can start thinking about other partners or all kind of negative behaviors and such can be temptations here. So but stage 4, at least where Michelle Weiner Davis puts it, is starting to have at least a little bit of hope. She calls it, that's just the way my partner is. And this is starting to open up ways, if you can get here, to think about understanding what your partner is doing or thinking or feeling. Another great researcher in this area, John Gottman, says, after extensive study, most disputes in marriages never get resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you never liked my mother, or I've never liked the way you cook lasagna, or whatever it is, right? Some of these things can be challenges that really never get resolved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I wish you were taller, or I wish whatever the metric is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the key element here is to have that curious mind, to be a little bit more investigative of what the partner is doing and thinking and feeling, almost like being a detective of your spouse, right?
Right.
So, and then stage 5 is a place where I think just about everybody would want to be. She calls it together at last, right? It's really the fulfillment and connection that you have, and where you acknowledge and at least understand both your own strengths and weaknesses and those of your partner. Now, it's
Right.
not nirvana. It's not, people on clouds with harps or anything. It does continue to require effort and attention.
Mm.
But I'm really proud to say that my wife and I have spent a lot more time in stage 5 than I know I deserve,
Yeah.
because it's really been a fulfilling and sweet part of our relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
stage 3 piece can really be a place where people flatline.
Mm.
But if people can have this vision or this goal in mind that it can get better,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that gives them some hope for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the vision that the 5 stages
Yes.
show, just exactly because of what you just said. Is there's some hope there? We don't have
Right.
to stay stuck in this stage, and it takes work, like you said. It takes humility just to
It
get to
does.
stage 4, where I'm kind of like, okay, well, I guess that's just kind of the way Kim is, and I'm not going to actually change her. That took
Right.
some humility and some patience for me to be able to move through that. I don't
Yes.
know. Maybe you've experienced something similar. I don't know.
I have, and again, I think that stage 4 it can also be a good place where you can spend a lot of your time as well. The
Hmm.
curiosity, the openness to experience, to really to trying to understand the other person. It really is an amazing thing once you can get to know your partner as well as you can in marriage. Again,
Yeah.
it has a great opportunity for that, with privacy and time and attention
Hmm.
with one another. It can be very helpful and very fulfilling to learn more about her and really try to understand a lot more about what makes her tick. And that's,
Yeah.
again, I really enjoyed that part of it as well.
Yeah. It's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
If we can get over ourselves from stage 3. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a key element, because coming out of stage 3, in a sense, a lot of us will be blaming the other person, right?
Hmm.
The reason that we're having trouble is because you do X, Y, and Z, or you won't do A, B, and C.
Hmm.
And stage 4, as I mentioned earlier, kind of gives at least a little bit of a glimpse for each partner to think about, well, what is going on there? And
Yeah.
ideally, it's a place where they can also reflect, well, what's going on with me? Where is this feeling that I
Mm.
have here about myself that I'm not getting something in my marriage? Is this a deeper issue from, I don't know, my childhood, or I got
Yeah.
disrespected at work, or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Am I bringing something else to this relationship that's not perhaps as helpful as it could be?
For sure. And I would guess for blended family couples, Ron Deal often says that, blended families don't get a honeymoon. So
Yes.
I would bet we're speeding right through stage 2, right into stage 3 pretty darn quick as a blended family
Yes.
couple.
It,
Hmm.
it can be very challenging, especially for you say this, for step couples. I know in our case, again, we came together when the children were all 5 and 7 years old. We have two each,
Yep.
from our prior marriages,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was a challenge. It really was, and we had to make some decisions pretty quickly about whether we wanted to have the same thing happen to us in our first marriages and the second marriage, or not, right?
Right.
And it was a challenging time, and I would love to say that I had some wise words that came out of my mouth to encourage and lead my wife into this decision to be more intentional. I think it really is something that we came to the same conclusion together, that we had to be
Great.
more intentional,
Yeah.
have a better way of talking to and helping and supporting one another, or it
Yeah.
really was going to be a situation where it'd be just yet another divorce for both of us, and
Yeah. Yeah.
neither one of us wanted that.
Absolutely. That makes sense to me. So thanks for sharing those stages, Mike. I wonder if we think through the lens of these stages,
Sure.
what do you think men need to do to become more intentional about loving their wife? If we get real specific about what do I need to do as a husband to be more intentional about loving my wife?
Sure. It's a challenge for men to be thinking about this. And it's one of these things that if you think about why don't couples make it? Why don't
Mm,
they create the relationship that at least at the outset looked to be so promising, right? You're in a
sure.
beautiful clothes and in a great looking church, and you're walking down the aisle or whatever,
Yeah.
and you think it's all going to be a great thing going forward. Well, there's this great quote from another author that we've studied called Terrence Real. He writes in his book, How Can I Get Through to You?
Mm,
Where he writes, the degeneration of connection that spans years
mm,
is made up of thousands of little tiny disconnections that just happen in mere moments.
yeah.
So when I think about that, I think about these thousands of little disconnections, almost like little tiny paper cuts, right?
Mm,
Happen to the relationship over time, and these can lead to all kind of significant issues, right?
right.
And then you're before too long, you'll realize that metaphorically, at least, the marriage is bleeding profusely and maybe can't be stopped, right?
Hmm.
So, and when I think about these paper cuts, I'm talking about snide remarks or bad looks or all the little things that annoy us directed toward your spouse, right?
Right.
And how those are being perceived, interpreted, etc. So what do I when I coach Ben on these areas? What do I say first is that we all need to look within, right?
Mm,
We need to find ways to tend to and strengthen ourselves, and I think that for me at least, my relationship with my wife has really become more mature and more and stronger when I and find myself more responsible for my own happiness, right?
yeah.
And realize that, hey, listen, I have a part to play in this. I'm not just sort of being instead served happiness. I need to be able to do what I need to do to find happiness here,
Mm,
right? So this goes back to being intentional about finding ways that little things you can do to make you happy, like I don't know, read a book or surf the internet or
mm,
have lunch with a friend or what have you. Little things you can count on to do when life gets super complicated.
mm,
And then another thing that helps in this regard is managing one's emotions,
mm.
right? And
Yep.
men have, historically not been told to manage their emotions very well, or not to have the emotions, etc. And so these are challenging things for men to be thinking about. So one thing that I have really learned about how to do is in a tense situation, like your wife's questioning or there's an issue between the two of you, or there's some challenge you're working on. If I can just remember a little phrase in my mind, it really seems to help a lot. I think to myself, do I want to be right or
Mm,
do I want to be curious? Right.
mm,
And what that means is trying to understand how to ask questions about a situation in a way that's kind as opposed to
mm.
accusatory. So these are some of the first things that I would say to men in these situations.
Yeah, I love that thought. That first thought to me made me think about, do I want to sit in this position of victim or do I want to be a victor?
Nice. I like
Yeah.
that. Victim and victor. Yes.
Yeah, it's easy if we're stuck in stage three and we're thinking,
Yes.
everything would be fine if you would change.
Exactly right.
It can feel like being a victim, but taking responsibility for my own satisfaction, my own peace, my own
Yes.
ability to control myself, that's moving toward victor.
Yes.
I
Right.
want that. I want to embrace that.
Yes. And another element of that, in my view, has been helpful to me and other men that use this approach. It's the emotional bank account, right? So
Yeah.
the idea is to be intentional about creating an emotional bank account with your wife,
Hmm.
and just like any bank account, it helps to have a lot of deposits, right?
Yeah.
So, and these don't have to be expensive things. I'm not talking about, buying her fancy jewelry and stuff every day or flowers or whatever, although that's nice to do on occasion, but just simply do and say nice, kind things to her, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that men can do to support their wives and indicate their respect, their love, their tenderness. Just open doors for her. One thing that Jane and I, every time we're walking through a door, I'm opening the door. I always hit the car door for her almost every time that I can, right? So it's just one little way I demonstrate to her and anybody
Yeah.
else who happens to be watching that she's my number one, right? And I know she
Yeah.
really appreciates that. So these emotional bank account deposits are very helpful.
Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that. I do that same thing, opening the door and that
Good.
kind of thing. And Kim has actually said, that doesn't really do anything for me. It doesn't
Okay.
really matter to me. And I said, that's great, but it's a real small representation of the kind of man I want to be. And
There
so
you go.
I'm gonna keep doing it. And so I do. And I think there are moments, she'll be listening to this later, but I think there's actually moments where she does appreciate it. She
Sure.
just doesn't. She just hasn't quite let on that one yet. But I don't know.
Right.
She can challenge me on that later. You can challenge me later, honey. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's it's the small things like you said. Do I want to be right or do I want to be curious?
Yes.
Isn't it interesting? I think for most of us who've been in any kind of regular work environment, whether we're in physical labor or whether we're in brain work, whatever it is that we do for our professions, often we kind of know how to kind of control ourselves. We'll head into a meeting and,
Right.
figure out, wow, I didn't really like the way that guy said that, but okay, I know that I need to behave in a certain way in order to get this deal
Yes.
done or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But then we go home and it's just like, free for all sometimes, right?
Oh, that's a
What
great
do you
way to
think's
put it.
behind that?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to think about it. And sadly, a lot of men do have to feel bottled up or
Mm,
constrained or very aware of their reactions at work because again it's the family livelihood often or a big chunk of it, and it's something that we get a lot of fulfillment out of being able to
yeah.
do and achieve and be part of a team or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
So we can tend to overlook say boorish behavior by a boss at least
Hmm.
temporarily in order to sort of move through the situation. But
Hmm.
sadly, as you say, when men come home, there needs to be a transition period when
Yeah.
he realizes, okay, listen, I'm in a different place now.
Hmm.
The kids really don't care why, I may have messed up the Wilson account at work today, or
Yeah.
that the company is thinking about going to do some layoffs and my job may be at risk or something. And,
Hmm.
again, the kids and my wife are there for me, and I need to be present for them. Right. And,
Yeah.
if there is a moment, if there's an issue at work and your spouse has been helpful in the past, please make sure she knows about these situations well in
Right.
advance.
Yeah.
But for sure, that's a trap that a lot of men can fall into, right?
Yeah.
What I can boss people around and at work. Clearly, that'll work at home too, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm. Mm.
not so much, right? So
Yeah, not so much. I remember a few times early in our career, there would be this kind of biting remark from Kim. I'm not one of your employees.
there you go.
I'm like,
There
ooh,
you go.
you're absolutely right. I actually have to learn from that and do something different.
It's really funny to think about these things and the idea about opening the door for my wife or telling her that she's beautiful multiple times a day or telling her that I love her multiple times a day. I mean, from a physical standpoint, these actions don't really cost me a lot. I'm not lifting a heavy weight or something. I mean, I'll do saying a few words and doing
Right.
so in a sincere way, of course, and because I really do believe that she's beautiful and I know that I love her. So, just to be able to communicate that to her
Yeah.
often and regularly is something that I think that she appreciates. When I I tease her sometimes. I say things like, "Darling, I'm going to tell you you're beautiful until you finally believe me." and she gets a giggle out of that too. We go, okay, fine. I'll
Yeah.
I know she does believe me, but it's
Yeah.
something that I indicate to her that I'm not going to stop doing this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I take pleasure in doing it.
So, really taking responsibility for ourselves, focusing
Yes.
on just those little things that really make a difference are a couple of approaches we can take. What do you think might be two or three other skills that men really need to develop in order to cherish and connect with their wife more?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, and it's a lot. There's a lot there. I mean, I think
Mm,
that going back to the idea about using the intentional approach is one to be really focused on. And
mhm,
what's helped me, I know, in my marriage is the willingness to learn. Right,
mm,
be willing to learn about both your spouse, your particular spouse, and about marriage in general, right? So
mm.
this is what education, this is what coaching is all about, and it doesn't take a brain surgeon to observe other marriages, other relationships that you friends and such. Then you see them out in the world, and you think to yourself, "Oh gosh, are they really happy together?" Or "I wonder why they
Mm.
are so happy together," or "Gosh, they sure don't look very happy together." And then
Yeah.
try to think about ways to emulate the things that get you where you want to go, and perhaps do less of those that are
Yeah.
slowing that progress down. And I think these are things that have really helped me. The five phases we talked about earlier really kind of put it into perspective for me.
Mm.
It gave me some hope in a sense of how a marriage could be, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about the emotional bank account piece. I think that for me, I like to be rather inventive in thinking about new ways to make deposits in that account.
Yeah.
Things like go to events, go to the park, help her in the kitchen, do cooking with her, etc. I've recently become more skilled in chopping vegetables and stuff with these new knives that we got. So she really
Nice.
appreciates me chopping up stuff for her, etc. And
Hmm.
we've also taken on over the last few months is ballroom dancing. I'm
Wow.
telling I'm telling all my guy friends, please just suggest ballroom dancing to your lovely bride, and see how
See
it
what
goes.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should work out well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been something really fun that we can do together, and it's really been helpful. I guess I would also coach men on figuring out how to listen without solving problems, right?
Mm.
You mentioned earlier things at work, right? If the boss comes in, we've got a problem with the Johnson situation and this, whatever, and then all of a sudden you're in a team meeting or you're with some colleagues or whatever, you're trying to figure it out. Okay, well, if we did this or we added this or we helped in this, whatever it was, and you're solving problems, and that's great, and that's what men have done for, of course, millennia, right? And,
Yeah.
and women have too, but I think that if you had to separate men and women in two words, which of course is a very gross way to do it, I've come across the construction of that women talk and men do, right?
Mm.
Again,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that women can't do and men don't talk, but
Right.
in general, men will want to tend to jump in and solve a wife's problems once he
Hmm.
hears about it,
Yeah.
right?
Why not? We got the solutions, right? I mean,
Exactly right. But often she just wants to talk,
right.
and
Hmm.
and she will feel better after talking. I
Hmm.
know it feels odd to a man to talk about a problem without trying to solve it,
Mm.
but again, going back to do I want to be right or do I want to be curious? So let her speak, and and then say, think, well, then what happened, or how did
Yeah.
that make that person feel, or how do you
Yeah.
feel about that, or and then you see how the conversation goes, and just sort of
Mm.
let it become a little bit more open ended than you might normally expect it to be, say at a work conversation.
That's right.
And then at the end, if it's appropriate, if she seems to be interested in what you want to say, I have a few thoughts. Would you care to hear them? I mean,
Yeah.
again, try to put it in a way that lets her be in more control as opposed to saying, well, you should do this and then you should do that, and,
Right. Hmm.
et cetera. So that's I think that would be a helpful way, a helpful tip for men
For
to think
sure.
about the challenging problem.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of asking permission
There you
before
go.
sharing my opinion. And actually,
Yeah.
the funny thing about that is the brain science actually shows that when you ask permission and then that other person grants permission, what's just happened in their brain is it
Yeah.
opens up receptors and it shuts
Yeah.
down defense mechanisms. It's not a magic wand, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
That makes a lot of sense. And it does seem to sort of connect that way in the sense
Yeah,
that just asking for it. And then, as you say, once the person's asked for a solution, they ought to be a lot more receptive to
for sure.
what you have to say.
For sure. I love the way that you put that last one. And let's just recap for a second. So what I heard you say is, hey, we want to adopt a growth mindset. I want to be able to learn about my wife, learn about marriage. That's a skill, actually, and not all of us have that. And so being able to say, I'm going to actually grab onto that and adopt a growth mindset. Then I heard you say, let's be more inventive. I think about the word novel, right? What are those things that we've just never done before that you're willing to do? And get out of your comfort zone, guys. Like, come on, let's do something a little different along the way.
Well, there was a moment, you're talking about inventive. Again, I wish I would have had some master plan for this, but there was early in our relationship, there was some issue that she had with somebody. It wasn't me. It wasn't with family or anything. And I was listening to her and she was really upset and I just did not know what to do. So I reached down and grabbed one of her feet and just sort of massaged her foot. And it was like, I was communicating to her that I was trying to connect with her, that I was just trying to listen. And of course, she really appreciated that. And also the fact that, people who are more skilled in this would say, oh, there's a famous nerves in the feet or something that lead to calm or something. I don't know anything about that. But basically, just the mere act of me, holding her foot and massaging it gently, and it really kind of helped her breathe a little bit more and perhaps, be a little bit more willing to see, potential solutions to her own problems. Right.
Yeah.
So that was key.
Those small little novel connection points that don't just happen all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So good. The third one I heard is listening without feeling like you have to solve a problem. I think that some of the best words a man can remember and learn to say is, it sounds like you're feeling, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
It's not that hard, guys. Like, it sounds like you're feeling, and then make your best guess. And if you get it right, great, because she feels really affirmed. If you get it wrong, great. Shut up and listen when she says, no, actually, I'm feeling this other thing. And, tell me more about that, right? Man, if we could just do that, it could change a lot of things, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What else comes to mind when it comes to skills that men need to learn?
Well, I think that, again, if we wanted to divide the sexes between in two-word summaries, which again is very dangerous to do, and in general, men are judged on how much they earn, and women are judged on how they look. Right. So it's sadly a big part of the world we live in today. And so as I was talking about earlier, I mean, if you could find new and interesting ways to tell her that she's beautiful, right? To tell her how much you love her. And that she's beautiful, even and especially when she may not feel that way, right? Her hair may be a mess, or she's going back from work, or whatever it is. And my hypothesis, and what seems to work for me, is that a couple things happen when I say the words "darling, you are beautiful." At least two things happen. One of which is that she hears those, and something in her skin, her eyes, or she actually becomes more beautiful, in my view. And then when you say that, you're also telling your mind, okay, that's the thought. I agree with that now, right? And you'll think it more strongly yourself as well, right? So especially if you can, think back to all the tender times, the sweet times that you've had with her, and combine that with the message that you love her and that she's beautiful. Yeah, these will really put some good deposits in your account, but it will also help you see her in a new and more loving light that will help you get from perhaps where you are in stage 2 or 3 into stages 4 and 5.
I love that, Mike. Can I add to that just a little bit?
Please.
I would love to combine that idea with your idea of kind of being novel and inventive, and say, change up your approach and your wording once in a while. Use the word cute. I tell Kim sometimes, oh, you look really cute today.
Right.
Or, notice some of the specifics. Oh, that top really looks cute on you. Now, I know some guys are like rolling their eyes in the back of their head right now.
Sure.
Going, really, Mike? Come on. I'm like, no, seriously, it makes a difference. If we make it novel and it's not always the same and it's not rote, but try to make it genuine and specific, that can really make a difference.
It does. It really does. I was at some little truck stop or gas station or somewhere that had these little sort of canvas keychain looking things with two little loops on the end with a little canvas saying in the middle. And some of them had a name or love or whatever, and one said hottie.
Yeah.
So I bought that for Jana, and she carries it on her keychain.
Yeah.
And I call her hottie all the time. And I would not be surprised to hear that she may conspicuously leave that keychain out when talking to her lady friends and lunch or whatever. Oh yeah, my husband thinks I'm a hottie, right?
Yeah,
So again, there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just one sweet little simple thing that I've done for her. And I like your idea of being novel in ways to express your love.
That's a great way to illustrate that. Another thought I have on this, I want to encourage guys, be consistent with this.
Yes.
And that can be hard sometimes when it feels like it's getting rejected.
Yeah.
So I tease Kim sometimes that, when it comes to this whole, affirmation thing, I want to play catch. Kim likes to play tennis.
Interesting.
Right? So I'm tossing, affirmations over her way, and she's just batting them back at me, right? I'm like, wait a second, I just want to play catch here and kind of move them back and forth. But man, she just bats them away and deflects them a lot of the time. But every once in a while, I sneak one past, and it actually connects with her. And
That's
so, it's just kind of a little analogy that we've had along the way. And what I've had to learn is it's still important for me to be consistent and keep affirming her in lots of different ways along our journey. Even though sometimes she says, I don't agree, or I don't want to hear that.
Yes. There's a whole kind of almost like science of compliments, right? How does one deliver a compliment, and perhaps more importantly, how is a compliment received, right?
Yeah.
So you can imagine a scene where two women are standing next to one another, and one says, "Oh, I like your shoes," right? And the one with wearing the nice shoes might say something. "Oh, these old things," or "I bought these at a thrift shop," or "I've had these forever," or just almost a denigrating kind of thing about the shoes, instead of simply saying, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate that."
Right.
Oftentimes it can be difficult to take compliments, and again, this might be an opportunity to be a detective of your spouse. If a man out there is honestly trying to give his wife a compliment, and she seems to be perhaps batting it back and that's not registering. Then it might be the time to ask a question. Honey, I'm curious. I really am genuinely. I do like the color of your fingernails. I'm curious as to why. This is something that it's hard for you to just say thank you or something. I'm sure that could be better worded as a question, but
sure.
The idea is just to try to have an earnest discussion. Again, going back to being a detective. Try to understand what's really going on there, and how can I help, right? Perhaps there's a better way I could say talk about your fingernails or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm honestly here to learn more. And oftentimes an interesting story will tumble out, like, oh, there was some girl in 7th grade and make fun of my fingernails or whatever, and then it maybe get you a deeper level of understanding.
Definitely. Yeah, that's good. I love that thought, that curiosity piece you said earlier. And then you're right. We've got to learn to be good detectives. That's a skill actually that we can learn and deploy in the context of our family leadership. How does being a really good detective actually fill the bank account of our wives?
Yes, these detective skills I think are very, very crucial. We talked about
Mm.
them a little bit already, but
Yeah.
again, it goes back to do I want to be right or do I want to be curious?
Hmm.
And so men and women are different. I know that's a big controversial statement nowadays, but in my view, what's been helpful to me and my wife are to really to delight in these differences, right?
Mm.
These are there for a reason. Do what you can to not get caught up in either male bashing or female bashing, right?
Mm.
We've all been to sort of a dinner party or something at someone's house where at some point during the evening, it seems like all the women are off on one side of the room, kind of,
Mm.
saying not great things about the men, and the men on the other side perhaps doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It really isn't a very constructive thing to do. And
Mm.
so instead, try to figure out ways to be a mutual detective, right?
Mm.
And perhaps the wife might say, honey, tell me, why does Home Depot make you so happy, right?
Mm.
I'm just kind of curious what great cars in your car magazine, what do they mean to you? I'm just
Yeah.
curious, right? Or for a man, what's the most helpful when you go get your nails done? Tell me about that
Mm.
experience, right?
Mm.
Going to a nail salon. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
have no idea what it's like, right? I'm genuinely curious, right?
Sure.
So, or darling, can you tell me it seems to be important for you to clean the entire kitchen before we can go to bed and have sex, and why
Hmm.
is that, right? So,
Yeah.
if you don't know the answers that go figure them out, right? And
Yep.
try to understand what's going on, and you might think, oh, these are kind of weird or not great attributes, but don't use a
Yeah.
word like that. Call instead, you say interesting or
Right.
fascinating or what have
Right.
you, because they really are.
Yeah.
They are interesting and fascinating
Hmm.
elements. The differences are so.
Yeah. I love that, Mike. I want to challenge guys that are listening to this right now. There's probably some groans with a few people.
Yes,
What? Ask her about the experience of getting a manicure? Like, are you
sure.
serious? Right? And lots of guys kind of think that. I want to challenge you over the next couple of weeks. Find 3 opportunities to ask just a question about something that your wife experiences that maybe you've never asked about before. And
Yes,
all I want you to do is when you ask that question, watch her reaction. Now, I say 3 because the first one, she might go, why are you asking me that?
right.
Because you've never done
Sure.
it before, right? And don't let that put you off, but try a second, try a third over the next couple of weeks. And what you might find is by that second or third time, she might be really interested in having that conversation. She might light up. She might feel
Yes.
cared for. She might feel cherished. She might feel loved. And so I want to encourage you, don't write this stuff off. It seems small. It seems fluffy, but it's some of the most important stuff when it comes to our relationships.
I really like that, Mike.
Mm.
The idea about gently asking questions in a way that encourages her to talk, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, for whatever reason, women are much better at verbal processing than
Hmm.
men are. They've got more, electrons or neutrons or croutons, whatever it is in their
Yeah.
brain that allows that. We're not going to solve that problem today, Mike,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, they're just so much better at verbal processing
Mm.
than men are. And
Mm.
the key is to figure out a way to pose a question that allows her to expand on her thoughts without ridiculing or shaming her somehow, right?
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
curious about that. Or how does it? What's it like when you're sitting in the chair and having your nails done? What are the sensations you're
Mm.
feeling
Mm.
besides what's happening to your hands?
Yeah.
And again, it's a fair question. I'm not challenging her for having her nails done or anything. It's just
Yeah.
that I'm curious about what happens in a nail salon, right? So,
Yeah.
I don't know about you. When I get my hair cut, I mean, there's an opportunity to talk to the guy who's cutting your hair. Maybe it's a similar experience. I have no
Hmm.
idea, right? So there's a whole body of work on asking powerful questions in
Yes.
general, but also specifically for husbands and to
Mm.
help husbands better understand their wives. So
Yeah. That is great, Mike. I totally agree. So you gave a couple of examples of what a curious question sounds like, a genuinely curious question, but you said do that in a way that doesn't create, friction or shame or whatever. What would if you took that same question about, hey, I'm really curious about your experience at the nail salon. If you flip that and you ask that in a way that's not curious, what does that sound like?
I can't believe how much time you're spending at the nail salon. Or it's something that I've kind of trained myself to go one way. It's hard to kind of go to the other. Why would you possibly want to spend 4 hours at a nail salon or whatever it is? Of course, these questions can be posed. Replace nail salon with golf course, and then
sure.
you got the same thing going the other way. So
comes back real quick, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly right. So again, these are things that perhaps that's what you want to be aware of as you go through this.
Let's. I know we're talking about investing in the growth and the health of our marriage specifically. Let's broaden that just for a moment. I'm going to veer off topic for a moment and think about this idea of curiosity and being a detective when it comes to blended family dynamics. So now I want to engage with my spouse. Often we recognize, okay, they come with kids, but I didn't realize I was also marrying their relationship with their ex. Like that exists and that kind of thing. How does that detective kind of curiosity, growth-centered mindset impact family leadership?
Yeah, it's a challenge, right? How to figure out ways to be curious and to gain understanding with children and stepchildren and all the relationships that are inherent, all that. You mentioned your wife's ex-husband or what you might call step-husband or whatever. So all those relationships are in there as well. And this is where it's really important to get knowledge, to gain understanding, and to seek information about these situations, because oftentimes if like me, your parents were not divorced and you didn't have that experience growing up. I had no idea what I was doing when I started my step family. And even if you were in a step family yourself, that was sample size 1, right? Where things went either better or worse than average. And that, the tools you perhaps learned in that situation may or may not be relevant to the one that you're in now as a parent. So again, it's all about gaining knowledge and trying to understand. And this is where the trying to solve a problem, I know I get a lot of satisfaction at work, say, when I'm trying to solve a problem. Try to put it in that sort of situation. Not that your family's a problem, but to try to understand all the various factors that are going into a more complicated relationship in a blended family.
Totally.
And really trying to find a way to unwind all those and understand them.
Yeah. Gathering that information, understanding, showing up in a way, it's funny. You were talking about like, we want to listen without having to solve problems. I know Kim doesn't want to be a problem to be solved. Right.
Right.
And the same thing could be said about my stepdaughter, Annika. She doesn't want to feel like she's a problem to be solved. She wants to feel like she's a daughter to be related to.
Right.
And I've got to be able to be curious. I've got to be able to do my homework. I got to be able to, gather that information and show up in a way that is curious, same principle, but curious in that relationship as opposed to judgmental or quick to action or any of those kinds of things. Yeah, absolutely. It's critical.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's leadership, right? That's leadership.
Indeed.
Yeah. Now, one more curiosity as we talk through all this, Mike. I don't know about you, but I've had times where I've felt angry and irritated and frustrated, and all of those things come along, and they tend to hijack this ability to be curious and whatnot.
Right.
And we all have that at one level or another. I wonder if you could share a little bit about your thoughts on what do we do with our anger and our irritation, our frustration?
Yes. It can be a very, very challenging thing as you've indicated, right? And you mentioned irritation and anger and frustration, and sounds like a regular Tuesday, right? So these things happen to us in varying degrees pretty much on a daily basis, it seems, right? So I spoke earlier about trying to look within, right, and trying to understand what's going on within yourself, and how have anger and frustration been modeled to you for you when you were growing up? Perhaps most importantly, would say your father, right?
Yeah.
And how did that sort of play itself out? Was he one who yelled a lot? Was he one who didn't say much? Was he respectful of the people or not, et cetera? Then hopefully at this point in your life, you've had the opportunity to see how other men deal with frustration and anger, both in a relatively safe place, say at work, or you're folks you knew from school, or et cetera. So the key thing about it is just really trying to understand, where is this frustration and anger coming from, right?
Yeah.
If you're, I don't know, let's make up a scenario. You came home and you came from work and you tried to give your wife a quick kiss while she was washing the dishes or something, and she responded that kind of snippily or whatever, and you walked away feeling frustrated or angry. Where might that have shown up earlier in your life, right? And did you see your own parents have that sort of interaction, or feel like because she did that to you at one moment, that you feel like the whole evening is going to be ruined, and that it's going to be a lonely evening that evening in bed, or whatever is not going to happen. So these are the things that can also play out in our minds, and sometimes they're helpful, but a lot of times they're not, right? So is this reminding me of something from my past? It's always a kind of a question to think about. Yeah. And again, trying to be curious, right?
Yeah.
The education about marriage and relationships can help. Again, and I'm not saying everyone needs to get a psychology degree or something, but simple things to read or to understand, like this 5-phase method we were talking about earlier. These can help we understand. And again, I think in general, I feel better when I'm doing something, when I'm acting. Yeah. And one of the things about being intentional and trying to be a leader is that it is helpful to them, because we feel like we're doing something. Even if it's just sitting and trying to understand why am I having the feelings that I'm feeling, spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes doing that, and you feel like you can make some progress. Okay, I'll take that off. Now I understand a little bit more about that. I mean, I have all the answers, but some actions would be helpful. So again, these things are going to continue throughout your life. You will always be there will always be sources of irritation, frustration, et cetera, in the world and in our lives. The challenge is figuring out, look back on a situation where perhaps you had an irritation or frustration and it worked out well. You did something that was a positive result, right? Yep. You were about to lose the Jones account, and then you said a few words to the client, or you did another presentation, or whatever it was, and all of a sudden they came back. Or make up your own example. So those kind of remembrances of things where you were able to overcome frustration, irritation, sometimes they can be helpful.
Yeah, I love that. We teach a process where, one, we do want to name the frustration or the irritation. In fact, not too long ago, we read some research that says just naming that hard pain, that struggle can actually help soothe the nervous system by up to 60%.
It can.
So if I, go to try to give Kim a kiss while she's washing dishes, and when I walk in the door and she kind of pulls back, just being able to, even if I just say it to myself, I don't have to say it to her. Oh, I'm feeling rejected right now.
Yes.
That actually can really help soothe the system. And then we teach this process of how do we turn that back around and get a greater truth about ourselves. And you were just describing that. Oh, well, I've handled frustration well before, when I was about to lose that account, or when I, had to deal with that difficult employee or whatever it was. That's a broader truth about me. Like, okay, I'm capable. Like, I can handle this. And being able to just walk yourself through that so that it doesn't have to ruin the evening, right?
Yeah. remembering moments where were able to turn a situation around. And if there's one other piece of advice that I can give folks, it's just to really think about your breathing, right? For whatever reason, the breath really can help address a lot of those very intense short-term feelings that you feel about irritation, frustration, etc. Of course, again, there's a million breathing techniques, but just a nice deep breaths, hold for a few counts, and then exhale. Do that 2, 3, 4 times. It's amazing how much lighter you feel and how much calmer you can feel, because, again, the brain is getting the oxygen it needs to think about new ways to perhaps react or respond that are more constructive.
Yeah, that's really good, Mike. We have to take responsibility for that as guys, right?
Yes.
We got to be responsible for our own anger, our own irritation. If I had an expectation that Kim was just going to respond to me the way I want her to respond in every interaction for the last 23 years, I think everybody and his brother would say, that's a really unrealistic expectation, Mike.
Yes, indeed. Indeed so.
Yeah. I wonder if I could just add one little thing, when it comes to these little moments where it's difficult, something that's really helped us is the words, the story in my head is. So I'm not coming back and accusing Kim of, man, you're pretty snippy today, not taking my kiss when I walked in the door or whatever it is.
Yes.
But hey, you know what, honey? The story in my head is that you're mad at me for some reason. Is that right?
Yeah.
And when I can frame it in that way, that hey, it's just a story. I might be right. I might be wrong. At least it can help us get to the truth. But I'm not, coming in guns blazing and accusing her of some wrongdoing because she rejected my kiss.
You've really touched on a great thing there, Mike, and you've done a couple of things you may not even know about it. One is you're avoiding the you statement, right? Instead of you are rejecting me, or you never kissed me back, or whatever it is. The preface to your phrase is about me. My story in my head is blank, blank, right? And you're really doing a nice job of framing it and taking responsibility for that. And you're also doing so in a way that again, you're just saying, this is in my head. My head has made has done some good things in the past, but it's also made some mistakes, and I fully admit that, right? And I'm happy to be shown wrong here. So there's a much gentler way to express the emotions and perhaps the frustrations you might be feeling in a way that could be more constructive.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for that affirmation, Mike. That's definitely helped us along the way. Good. Well, Mike, I'm curious, we've got somebody listening and they're like, okay, I'm on the front end of this here, right? Yes. I do have some irritation. I do have some frustration. I'm not all that curious. I don't really care what the experience at the nail salon is. They're kind of in that front end going, but what I do want is I do want to experience connection. I do want to experience closeness, and I do want my wife to feel loved.
There you go.
And so if I'm in that position, I'm on the front end, what would be just the 1 or 2 things that you would suggest that I would do this week?
This week, I would start with the emotional bank account, specifically talking about how much you love your wife and how beautiful you think she is. Right? Women will simply never get tired of hearing that. And it makes them feel special and cherished, and it will also make you feel like more of a protector, more of the knight in shining armor that that she deserves, right? So these are things that I believe would be real key elements to start the process, right? So from there, it's really thinking about what are your objectives, what are your goals, and hopefully we'll all live long and rich and full lives. Ideally, we'll do so with a loving and kind and sweet partner by our side. You think about all the relationships in a busy home between children and spouses and step parents and all the others, things are going on. If you had to pick one relationship there to work on and to build, you'd be well advised to focus on the building the relationship between you and your spouse, because the children will grow up, the pets will sadly move on to the pet heaven at some point, The idea here is that if you can find a way to set a foundation for a long-term, close, tender, supportive relationship, you'll be so far ahead of everyone else as you enter, your later years that it will almost seem unfair. The blessings that can flow from it.
Yeah, and hopefully hit stage 5, right?
There you go. Exactly right.
Yeah.
The real goal is if you can find a way to flip between stages 1 and 5 in the same relationship. So that's an advanced class. So.
There you go. Without all that stuff in the middle. Absolutely.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Very good. No, I love that. It's a great starting point. 1, offer affirmation. And I might even add to that, just ask your wife, what is it that makes you feel cherished?
Yes.
Like use those exact words. What is it that makes you feel cherished? And then really listen and then try to deliver on that. And the second thing I heard you say is like, name your goal, name your vision. What is it that I want? What does stage 5 look like? How do I actually get there? And keep yourself focused on that. I mean, that same strategy works at work, right? Again, not that we're trying to fix our wife or have have her be a problem to fix, but man, chasing vision, that's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Love it. Mike, what a pleasure to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for talking about family leadership and investing in our marriages. I love these 5 stages. They're really helpful. I wonder if someone out there is listening and they're going, man, I'd really love to connect with Mike Haney. Remind us, where can we find you?
Yes, I really appreciate our time together today as well, Mike. I really honor and respect all the work that you do. And I really feel called to encourage other men to be and to do more and to really become better versions of themselves. So in my view, every man needs more courage, right? So I put a website together for that. It's called mancourage.com. And folks can go there and learn about me and the work that I do. And again, I'm really just trying to find ways to communicate to men that change is possible. Yeah. And I think with encouragement, men can achieve so much more than even they imagine.
Yeah, I so appreciate that. Mancourage.com. We're going to put that link in the show notes. So if you're listening right now, all you got to do is scroll down, find that link, click it. You can head over to Mike's website. We'd love for you to connect with him. Hey, thanks so much again, Mike, for just spending some time with me today. Really appreciate your perspective, your thoughts, and your goals in helping other men achieve what they really want in their marriages and in their family.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, Mike. I sure appreciate it.
Absolutely.